Okay. Namaskar and a very warm welcome to everyone joined in today on our 28th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. This talk is being organized as part of the ongoing Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav, which CZ is taking forward through a massive outreach campaign entitled Conservation to Coexistence, the People Connect. Under the helm of this campaign, we will be showcasing 75 conservation priority species and 75 zoos, highlighting one species and one zoo each week. We are currently in week 28 of this celebration with the smooth-coated otter as the species in focus and the Dr. Shayamaprasad Mukherjee Zoological Garden as the zoo in focus. So joined in today to speak to us on the species is Dr. Syed Anul Hussain. Dr. Hussain is an internationally acclaimed for his contribution in the field of wildlife science. He did his doctorate on the smooth-coated otters from the National Chambal Sanctuary in 1993, and he's among the few to obtain a Doctor of Science degree in the field of wildlife science. He has over 150 scientific publications which cover different aspects of research. He's also the member of the IUCN Otter Specialist Group and the Focal Red List Authority on the otter species of the world. He retired from the Wildlife Institute of India in June 2020 as a faculty member, but continues to spearhead and coordinate wildlife conservation programs across the country. Namely, the programs that he coordinates are the Ganga Rejuvenation Project, the Ganga Aquatic Biodiversity Conservation Project, both of which fall under the purview of the National Mission for Clean Ganga. He will speak to us today more on the species in focus. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Arundhati. And I take this opportunity to thank Sonali, Dr. Sonali, who is my former colleague, and we did very good field work also. And I take this opportunity to thank everyone at CZA who are conducting this program and spearheading the conservation of 75 species through public awareness. It's a good opportunity, and if you permit, I can start now.
Yes, sir, please start.
Okay, before I start, I would like to show some clippings of different species of otters. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, yes, sir, it's visible.
Surat, what you see the clipping of smooth-coated otter on the right again. This video has been taken by my students at where showing a typical habitat of smooth-coated otter and this species. You can note the morphology of the otter. The previous clipping which you saw the Russian otter. There is not significant difference when you see in movie or in photos. Here you see small, which is very small, around 1 meter in size and around 4 kgs. I will talk about that in a while. So please note the streamlined body of otters. They belong to family Mustelidae and the subfamily Luthrini. The Mustelidae in India contains larger number of small carnivores than any other families. Here you can see atypical otters. They have whiskers for detecting prey or for movement the prey species underwater. They have webbed feet, which is adapted for swimming. They have paddle-like muscular tail, which helps in maneuvering them in water. And they have dense fur, which protect them from cold and also keep them dry because it holds a lots of air below its underfur. In world, there are 13 species of otters distributed mostly in tropical countries. In subtropical countries, they have very limited number of species. You can see in Asia, in region there are 1 to 4 species. So I will talk why a particular species is found in area, and also I will give you information on the smooth-coated otter, which is the focal species for today's presentation. So as you can see in the map, the India has around 3 species of otters. There are 4 in Southeast Asia, but we are lucky to have 3 species. And these 3 species are smooth-coated otter, Eurasian otter, and small-clawed otter. The Eurasian otter has a very wide distribution, but smooth-coated otter, which you see in the top of the slide, is distributed in India, eastward into Indonesia or Southeast Asia. But we have a small subspecies, Lutra paspicillata maxwelli, which is found in marshes of Iraq. So smooth-coated otter is truly an Asian species. Then the Eurasian otter has a very wider distribution. The Eurasian otter is found in the Himalayas and in southern India, particularly above 600 to 700 meter altitude, whereas the smooth-coated otter is found below 700 meter altitude and also in the coastal areas. The smallest one, the small-clawed otter, has a limited distribution in India. It's found in foothills of Himalayas and also in the Western Ghat. We have recently found remnant population in Orissa along the Eastern Ghat as well. So from the photos, you can see the smooth-coated otter largely uses big rivers, and they share their habitat with gharial and crocodiles. The Eurasian otter, they use smaller streams, particularly the forested streams in the Himalayas and also in Western Ghats. And the small-clawed otter uses narrow streams or very shallow streams having less than 30 centimeter of water. And you can see their scats, or which is called sprint in jargon or in otter terminology. The sprints of smooth-coated otter is usually very, where you can see is a kind of fluidy substances wherein you can see lots of fish body parts, the scales, the bones. Similar thing you get in Eurasian otter, but in case of small-clawed otter, you get lots of crab and very smaller scales for fish. You can see the footprints of smooth-coated otter. These photos are from Chambal River, and you can see these. At least in the right-hand side photos, you can very clearly see 5 to 6 otters have moved on a very clean sandy beach. And in the down photo, you can see 2 otters has gone into water. So knowing the footprints of otters of different species will tell you the story behind what has happened at that time when the otters were moving. So it gives a picture of the activity done by the otters. Here you can see the sprint, and this is again from Chambal. In the first photo, you can see the sprint with urine deposited on sandy substratum. And the right-hand side, you can see large piles of sprint or scat, and which has been deposited over time. And the down photo, which says how a site looks like over the years when otters defecate in one place, and these are called communal latrine areas. Here you can see the signs of otters again. These are also signs of Eurasian otter from Uttarakhand, and often they live under the tree trunks in burrows. So you can very easily locate if you do a survey along the river bank, covering 10 to 15 meters of the bank area. And these are the den sites, which are popularly called as holt, Holt, which could be the modified rocks or rocky crevices, or dug in sandy banks, or under the root. The photos were taken from the Uttarakhand, and the right hand side photo is from the Periyar Tiger Reserve, taken by one of my students. I will start from the prey-predator relationship. What is the diet of smooth-coated otters and how it is different from two other Indian species which is sometimes found in a similar habitat, or they are occurring as a sympatric species. So as you can see from the diet chart of smooth-coated otter, they are mostly fish eaters. Around 92 to 95% of their diet consists of fish, whereas Eurasian otter's diet is around 60 to 65% with fish and the remaining other smaller prey species. Whereas small cloud otter is a small otter, mostly dependent on small prey species, particularly the crabs and the shrimps, which is found in the shallow water areas. Here, what I am showing here, people ask me questions: why we should preserve otters or conserve otters when they eat large quantity of fish, and they compete with the fisher fox in many habitats all over India. Here in the photo, you can see the smooth-coated otter carrying a tilapia, and our studies suggest that they are able to control the population of exotic fish species or invasive fish species, which is now very prominent in most part of the country, and tilapia is among it is very dominant. They do eat some sport fish also like mahasir, and they also eat some prey which are very endemic and important for the habitat. But what I feel that they regulate the population structure of prey species, particularly the fish species in rivers and lakes. The other important factors why we should conserve otters is that they do not eat fish which is very healthy. They prefer to eat, they go for fish which are very sluggish in nature or having some kind of disease. So in a way, they control spreading of fish disease. In many parts of the country where you might be getting information that fish are dying because of some unknown disease, it could be that the otters were there earlier and they were controlling the spread of disease by consuming the diseased fish species. Now the otters are not there, so that's why the disease might be spreading. So they have very significant ecological role as the top carnivore of the aquatic environment. In the same way, the tiger, which is maintaining the population structure of large ungulate species in forested systems or in terrestrial systems. So otters can be the presence of otter can be taken as indicator of good habitat conditions and maybe availability of good prey species in that area. Here you can see the number of prey species which is found in a single scat. Out of 553 friends, which I did my own for my PhD work, I found that majority of the scat has 4 to 5 species, sometimes 6 to 7 species in a single scat or single sprint, which indicates that the dependence of otters on large number of prey species, not a single or species, particularly like tiger, which is a large predator and depends on larger prey for their sustenance. So here in this map, in this chart, what you can see is that the frequency of occurrence of number of species in scat sometimes goes up to 7 species, but usually 4 to 5 species you find. It's very difficult to detect those 4 to 5 species in a scat. And here you can see how what is the requirement of otters to sustain themselves in a habitat. Okay, what you can see here, roughly around they need 10 to 15 species, presence of 10 to 15 species at any given time to sustain otters in a habitat. It means that the larger number of prey species, the otters are much more prominent in those habitats and they can sustain more. But they might be dependent on 4 to 5 species or maybe 10 to 12 species at some time, but their prey, you can say, demand largely revolves around 2 species. Here I am showing the example in Chambal River. There are 2 species called Rhinomugil corsula and Rita rita, which is predominantly prey species of smooth-coated otter, and there is fluctuation in the population. When there is Rhinomugil corsula, the upper one which you are seeing, scaly fish, when its population is high, at that time the population of the Rita rita, which is a catfish, is low. I mean, they switch depending on the availability of prey species. They switch from one species to two species and sometimes also 3 species on which they are dependent. They sometimes take fish of around 3 to 4 kgs, sometimes around 30 centimeters long. But majority of the fish species which they can consume are from 5 to 15 centimeter long. They don't go for larger species because in the pursuit of large prey species, they spend more energy, and being an aquatic animals, they need to conserve the energy. So usually that's why they go for smaller fish species. During my PhD days, I did radio telemetry study, and this was the first kind of study in Asia and also for India, wherein I captured around 4 otters and I implanted the transmitters in their peritoneal cavity so that it should not hanging up foreign body outside in a streamlined uh, aquatic animal may be hindrance in capturing prey. So we implanted radio transmitters and we monitored them for almost for more than 2 years. And for our objective is to derive what kind of habitat otters are using and what is their basic requirements and what is their behavior. Here I am showing the home range of smooth-coated otters. An adult smooth-coated otter needs around 17 kilometers of river stretch. If you say Chambal, it's roughly around 250 meter to 300 meter wide. So area requirement is around 6.7 or 7 square kilometer areas. A sub-adult male requires around 11 kilometer of river stretch, and it varies from season to season. In winter, the home range length is higher, and in monsoon, it's very less, around 4 kilometer of river stretch. Sub-adult females, which are on a growing stage, maybe within 2 years of time, the maximum home range is around 7 kilometers, and the minimum is around 5 kilometers of a river. And the juvenile female and male, sometimes they form the family groups with small pups, so they don't move much. The maximum which we recorded at 5 kilometers with babies, and in summer it was very less, around 1.5 kilometers. Similar in monsoon, means family with babies, they less travel, whereas when they become adult, they need around 11 to 17 kilometers of river stretch for sustenance. And this river stretch should have a kind of different conditions. Maybe there is a sandy shore for grooming or rolling on the sand, the rocky stretches for hiding or for making a den or hold, and the vegetations along the river bank for movement. What you see in this graph is that I have depicted it's a single river, wherein I have depicted that the home range is restricted to 2 rocky stretch of the river, and which is around, you can set 5 to 7 kilometers. So otter moved between these 2 rocky stretch. So in Chambal River, the constraint is not a prey species, but constraint is availability of the den sites, which is usually provided by the rocky stretch of the river. And one of my students, Dr. Asghar Nawab, he did his PhD on smooth-coated otter in Corbett, and he manually tracked the home range of the otters. And what he did is that he followed otters and he could identify them. And he found that in Ramganga River within the Corbett Tiger Reserve, the home ranges varied between 4 to 9 kilometers. And other two rivers, Mandal and Palayan River, the home range was around 6 kilometers and 17 kilometers. So what I wanted to emphasize that the home range size is regulated here because of two factors: the availability of den site and availability of prey. If there are more den sites, the home range was smaller. If there are more prey species, then the home range size was smaller. It means it conforms with the other studies on other carnivore species or other mammalian species that home range is governed by the availability of resources. Here you can see the group size of smooth-coated otters, and you may ask, what is the average group size of otters? Normally, the otters have group size of 5 to 7 individuals or 5 to 9 individuals, but I have sometimes noted as much as 16 individuals in one group, particularly in Dudhwa Tiger Reserve and in Corbett Tiger Reserve. It means that if the habitat condition is good, prey availability is good, the home range size will be smaller and there will be large group of otters. But this group usually consists of a mother, which is the family is matriarchal, having 3 to 5 babies, and sometimes male joining and tending in rearing of the babies. So the smooth-coated otter is more or less social. Their behavior pattern is almost equal to other large social carnivores like lions, hyena, and wild dogs. Sometimes people say, do otters are nocturnal? What are their activity pattern? Here I can show that otters are not nocturnal per se. They are crepuscular in their movement or in their activity. They are more active early in the morning between 4 to 8 a.m. and then in the evening between 5 to 9 p.m. and there is gap in between where they take rest. And this resting gap is depend on the temperature of that region. If it is too sunny, then the resting period is usually wide, maybe from 9 or 10 o'clock onwards till evening. They are not very active. They take rest and they go for siesta. And winter, when the temperature is comparatively lower, they are seen being hunting or going out, and they're moving around in daytime also. So what I feel that the temperature is a governing factors in their activity pattern, but also the disturbance level. If the habitat is very disturbed, you may not see otters during daytime. They hide and they become more active during evening or early in the morning, coinciding with the occurrence of or the activity of prey species. What we have observed, certain fish species are active during evening and morning times. So otters also adjust themselves according to the availability of prey species or activity of the prey in a given habitat conditions. So what governs occurring of different otter species? The first thing which is evident is the habitat heterogeneity. If there are diverse habitat conditions, for example, a river stretch having sandy beach, rocky beach, mud, and vegetation cover, they prefer those kind of habitat. And if the prey species diversity and richness is higher, they prefer that kind of habitat. And the third factor, which I have termed, is that site integrity and species tolerance. For example, fishermen fishing sometimes otters, they usually avoid such conditions, but over the time they become used to also to these conditions. And I have seen in many parts of the country otters actually eating or stealing fish from the fisherman nest, leading to the confrontation between the fishermen and otters, in which otters are getting killed. So in a landscape level, how otters are distributed in a very large landscape or in a biogeographic zone. Here I am showing the Gangetic Plains. In the Gangetic Plains, there are 3 species of otters which are found sympatrically, but they have different habitat conditions and requirement. The Eurasian otter found mostly above 700 meters or 600-meter altitude, which we have observed in the Ganga basin from above, from Rishikesh, particularly between Rishikesh and Devprayag. And also we observed these otters, particularly the small clawed otters, in narrow streams of the Himalayas, particularly between 1,000 meters to 2,000 meters altitude, where the water level in streams are less than 30 centimeter in depth. And in the plain part, in the Gangetic Plains, it's mostly dominated by smooth-coated otters. The smooth-coated otters again found in Sundarban areas, in the coastal areas, sometimes overlapping their distribution with the small clawed otters. So this is largely the kind of prey species they forage on. As I had said in the beginning, that small clawed otters usually live in shallow rivers, streams, and they eat mostly crabs and shrimps, whereas the smooth-coated otters live in larger rivers and they eat mostly fish, which is bigger, usually in average 15 centimeter, 10 to 15 centimeter in length, whereas the Eurasian otters is living in between, where water level is usually 2 meters and the streams are narrow at higher altitude, having less environmental temperature. And this governs their uh, morphological morphology of their dentation pattern. Ionics are mostly, or the small clawed otters are mostly the crab eaters, so they are carnassial, or the teeth pattern is much more modified than the Eurasian otter and the smooth-coated otters. What are the conservation issues which is affecting the otters? And first thing is that the absence of prey species in majority of the aquatic habitat, and otters are directly competing with humans for their prey, and most of the rivers are devoid of any kind of uh, fish species or prey species, because people use very small size mesh. Even sometimes they use mosquito net to fish out all the living organism which is found in an habitat, and they use all those prey species. So the depletion of prey is affecting otters very severely. Second factor which is affecting is the water pollution. Water pollution is not only affecting the availability of prey, but directly might be affecting, we don't have any evidence, but might be affecting the health of the adult otters. The second factor which is affecting is the poaching, which is very rampant. And in certain part of Southeast Asia, the otters are killed particularly for their pelt or the skins, which is used for making fur coats. Here you can see some of the example. The first photo is from confiscated skin from India, which came to our institute for identification. The second and third photos is from Southeast Asia, where they are showing that even the hairy nose otter, which is critically endangered species, are being killed rampantly. And the otter trade is highly organized. And for example, around 2000, year 2000 to 2005, there are around 7,000 to 8,000 otter skin were confiscated in trade. And there is estimate that for about 10 otter skin, there is one tiger skin, means the otters are vulnerable 10 times than the tiger for their skins in trade cases. And here I have depicted the information were taken from net, and what I have depicted here is that the movement of trade route for otters, usually it goes to uh, China or to Southeast Asia. And if we can control the trade of otters, particularly be vigilant in this route, there is chances that the trade of otters or killing of otters may come down. So now, last, as a Red List Authority, I am monitoring otters since 1996, the global otter population. Eurasian otter is, the status is near threatened. The smooth-coated is vulnerable. This Asian small-clawed otter is mostly vulnerable nowadays, and the hairy-nosed otter is now considered as endangered. And all the 4 Asian otter species are showing declining in their population, particularly the smooth-coated otters and the hairy-nosed otters in many parts of South and Southeast Asia. So here I would like to say what maintains otter species diversity. If we want to conserve otters, what should we do? We need to maintain the landscape diversity and the characteristics. We should not convert the natural landscape entirely into agriculture field or human habitations. We need to conserve the prey species. Generally, 100 kg of prey species supports 1 kg of predator biomass. So if the weight of otter, average weight of otter, you can take 6 kg, and there are 10, so it's 60 kgs is coming. And accordingly, we need to maintain the prey biomass in a condition in an habitat. Otherwise, the otter will move away from those habitat where prey availability is very less. The third factor which is affecting otters are the protection from poaching and persecution. And definitely the decline of otters in India and Southeast Asia, largely because of poaching and also depletion of prey species. Coming to site integrity, we need at least 17 kilometers of river stretch. If our river is around 250 meters to 300 meter wide, to maintain a single population of otters, having a family of 5 to 9 otters, 5 to 9 individuals. So unless until we provide adequate undisturbed habitat condition or river, for example, where I did my study, it may affect otter population. Then the other factor which is affecting is the adequate vegetation cover along the shoreline. If the shorelines are cleared of vegetation or burned or used for agriculture purpose, it hardly provides any kind of cover for otters, and usually otter move away. So that is the case of Gangetic basin. Along the Ganga river, we have cleared the entire vegetation along the river bank, and mostly they are being cultivated seasonal vegetables, which affects the otter population. And if there is a good denning, resting and grooming site, like for example within a protected areas, or the microhabitat characteristics governs the availability of otters. What I studied in Chambal, that presence of rocky stretches and vegetations are important for maintaining otter population. Now to conserve otter, what should be done in both at the administrative level for the researcher or biologists like us, and for the managers? We need to maintain heterogeneity in the river and wetland. We need to monitor otter population trend and their habitat based on standard survey methods, which we have published in various literatures available for India and for Asian countries. We need to know what is happening to the otter population when they are under threat, when there is so much of trade is going on. So usually we don't have any information, but over the years, this information has been gathered. We need to control poaching and persecution through protection and networking. All the three species are otters in India are protected under the Wildlife Protection Act, and the act itself is so strong that it's definitely preventing poaching, further poaching or declining of population. We need to ensure adequate prey base by providing protection to wetlands and other habitats. We need to enhance protected area network covering wetlands and rivers. We need to conduct EIA study for all development projects affecting wetlands and otter habitats so that we should know actually what is happening and how otters are getting affected. Whether, for example, creation of a reservoir is a positive trend for otters or a negative factor which is affecting them. We need to undertake awareness campaign to conserve wetlands and the obligate species. Particularly, we should promote this among the fishermen communities who are the major stakeholders in otter conservation, and sometimes they definitely kill otters when their own survival is affected. So these are the major factors we can do as a biologists or as managers to conserve otters in India. And before I conclude, I would like to show the work which I did some 30 years back, and Institute filmed this work as it was a pioneer work on otters. And I will urge the biologists to come forward and take more research and more conservation work on otters. This is what I did in Chambal. I monitored the otter population along a 450-kilometer stretch of Chambal River, and then I identified different families. I captured members from each family. Then I radio implanted transmitters. We did radio implantation in field conditions. Of the veterinarians in our institute, they helped me in this radio implantation work.
Using special antenna equipment, Hussein will now be able to observe this agile and elusive animal. He will obtain data on their habitat needs and breeding biology. This information will help plan measures for better conservation of otters
and also the river conservation in India. And I take this opportunity to thank everyone who helped me being an otter biologist. And also I would like to thank the CZA and Dr. Sonali and Arundhati for giving me this opportunity to present my work, which I did 30 years back. Some of the work I have taken from my students, and thank you everyone. I hope it helps.
Thank you so much, sir, for the in-depth talk, not just on the biology of the species, but also the resource preference between the different species found in India and the conservation challenges and way forward. It's indeed a long, it's almost like 3 decades of research that you've showcased in a very short span. So thank you so much. We now move on to the section on the zoo, wherein we will speak on the zoo, and then we will take question answers for this session at the end. So we have, for the zoo section, we have with us Dr. Rajesh Patel, who is the superintendent and in charge of the Dr. Shayamaprasad Mukherjee Zoological Garden, Surat. He's a veterinarian by training and has over 19 years of experience in the field of wildlife management and healthcare research. So over to you, sir, to speak more on the zoo.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. I would like to thank Hussein sir to give in-depth information regarding this otter species. We are keeping otters since in our zoo since last 17 years, but whatever the information today I have got from Hussein sir is much more important in our zoo management also. I would like to give some details about our zoo history and what we are presently doing in otters species. Surat Zoo is initially was a mini zoo in established in 84 at city center area. After 92 on CZA come in force, there is no space for future expansion and specific requirement for species which we have kept in mini zoo. So corporation has decided to relocate and develop a new site on Sarthana area, which is 81 acres area existing zoo and was uh, open for public in 2003. At presently, we are displaying total 47 species in captivity and about 390 animals. Yearly, 9 to 10 lakhs visitors are taking visit of our zoo, and at present we are under a medium zoo category. We have very good breeding of some species like smooth-coated otter, sloth bear, foreign antelope, tiger, lion, and hippo too. We have, as in slide, we have a separate section in zoo for routine management and other things. Next, Karan. Next, Karan. Within zoo premises, we have created one butterfly park for conserving the species which we have found in our premises. At present, it is in 70 square meter areas, totally covered, and mainly in seasonal, we are finding 30 species in the main season. Next. We have one section separate well-established wildlife interpretation center for education and awareness. In that area, we have three parts. One is a nocturnal house. Second is for education. And in nocturnal house, we have created one sound and sound show to create artificial atmosphere in just like wildlife. Next, Karan. Next job. Next job. Otter. Mainly, we have otter initially got rescued from flood-prone area in 2006. At that time, we have got two species, two females. After 1 year, we have one more male rescued from forest official, and after that, pairing after 2 years, we have got successful captive breeding in otter species. We have till date 25 puppies rear in captivity, and we have exchanged with other zoos also. But unfortunately, when you in that zoo, nobody has get successful breeding. Why I don't know, but I afterward I would like to get some guidelines from Hussein sir that what we can mainly keep in mind for successful breeding of otter in captivity. to, like video भी share करो. We have got very good exchange animals from other animal against the otter. At present, we have total 30 otters in captivity. From our zoo, category of otter. In of last year breeding video. At present, we have total 13 otters in captivity, and out of that, 8 are males and female. Out of one sub-adult female. And during this 13, 14-year experience, we have noticed that in the group only one dominant male and female can be remain in the group. Whenever the crop from their crop, whether male or female will dominate, they will fight, and during fighting, one this animal is separated, and all the whole group are attack on that. And finally, if we will not timely separate it out, they will kill that animal. So at present, we have created a separate facility and keep total 4 pairs in separate enclosure. And hopefully, this year or next year, we are expecting to get in-house 10 or more puppies in captivity. Once upon a time, Surat having the group of 18 voters in Sri. Afterwards, there are incidents of reporting and severe injury. One male and one female were lost. After that, we have decided to keep separate. So at present, we are keeping for one or two pairs with their main parents. And when the male or female puppy is adult, and at the suitable age, we are separating them out. Whatever animal we have are parents of rescue animals, so we are trying to get male or female from at the zoo, or we have requested to forest officer also. As South Gujarat region is having otters in wild. Even in Surat, Kapi have spotted many otters. So we have requested the officer to pair if the male or female we can get. We have planning to change region also and continue for further breeding. We are also planning for preparing a separate breeding of exhibit breeding facility, and for that we have also submitted design and drawing, but some very rare with severe, but we will totally sort it out and create of exhibit breeding facility also. This is all about the present we are working, and in future we are planning for this otter conservation and breeding in ex situ condition. Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir, for the for the presentation on this on the zoo, which was and the species and the videos that you've showcased of the conservation breeding program that's currently in place in your zoo. So we now move on to the question and answer session for both the sections. So Dr. Hussain, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Fine. So, sir, we'll go for the first question for you. The first question is that with the changes in fisheries practice, what are the impacts on smooth-coated otters?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
So the question is that with changes in fisheries practices, what are the impacts on smooth-coated otters?
Here, it depends on how we define the fishing, the change in fishing pattern. One could be the use of smaller size of a net. Okay, that's called mesh size. We have a kind of recommended size of mesh for fishing in different habitat conditions. So if we use smaller fish size, mesh size, then we sieve out all the living organisms which are found in our wetland or aquatic systems. So first question is, to answer your first question, the first thing, because of change in the fishing pattern, we sieve out all the living organism that reduces the prey availability for otters. Second thing is that sometimes otters are getting entangled in fishing net also, and they are killed by the fishermen communities. So there are the two factors. The first thing is depletion of prey. Second thing is direct persecution by the farmers, fish farmers. Say, for example, in coastal part of Andhra Pradesh, okay, where the stake of fish is very high, for captive fisheries, maybe a fish or maybe prawn, they are directly in confrontation with the fishermen, resulting in the death of otters. So these are the major factors. There are rules and regulations which government has formed. What we need to do is the strict enforcement of those guidelines which has been developed after the years of studies. So that's my answer for this question.
All right. So following up with that question is also that what forms of community engagement with fishermen do you think would help with fishermen who are dependent on the same habitat would help this species?
See, when it comes about economic loss, okay, that hurts the fishermen. So what we need to do, promote, first thing is to gain their confidence, promote alternative livelihood options for them, maybe win them out. There's a good example of ecotourism program which has been taken up in the coastal parts of India, particularly in the coastal Andhra Pradesh, where they have developed a kind of alternate livelihood option for the communities. You know, this is to gain confidence that that we are doing for something. We understand their loss and we are doing something to compensate them. This is the first thing, is gaining the confidence of the fishermen communities. Second thing is that educating them about the benefit of otter conservation. As I said, that otter used to eat the slow moving or disease prey species. Now that we have removed otters, the disease is spreading. Unless and until we educate the local communities, the mass in general, our message, conservation message, will not go, particularly in the face of economic loss. So second priority I will give to educate the people as much as possible. So
All right, sir.
zoo is an
Yeah.
example. I mean, if I don't see many otters in Delhi Zoo. So there were otters and good population of smooth-coated otters. Over the years, the otters are not there in Delhi Zoo. So if we can promote the at least in exhibit to educate people, people will know what otters look like and what kind of conservation measures is required. I think we are lagging in conserving otters in captivity.
Okay, sir. So the next question for you is that so in terms of home ranges, do different family groups overlap, and are there any records of intra-specific competition or aggressions between the groups in these overlap areas?
Yeah, this is what I have observed. I will explain my narration. That what sometimes it happens, the first thing you note that the otters are basically social carnivores, but they don't have strict home range, which is called territory. The territoriality in otter is much more fluid. I mean, they don't defend their territory. Sometimes the two family groups may join together, and if they are in larger group, they are much more efficient in catching the prey species, and they forage efficiently. After foraging, which I observed actually in Chambal, is that then the group will again break. So the group size sometimes look bigger because there are two or three groups they have merged together. So they have very good home range, and sometimes the adult male also patrol and the home range. But when they meet, they they behave as a single group. So it means that they have home range defined in which they are moving for their day-to-day sustenance, but it is not very strictly protected that this is my area and you cannot intrude it. And rather they take advantage of the two group or larger group joining together and do a communal fishing activities, and then they forage and they disperse again into different groups. So the group size sometimes is very fluid. Unless until you are monitoring them, you will not know that they belong to two or three different groups.
All right, sir. So, and the last question for you is that can you elaborate more on the the measures that are in place to prevent the poaching of otters, if there is any at the moment?
Yeah, the first thing is that we are struggling to find out the extent of otter trade. We do get pelts which are confiscated by the forest department or the enforcing agencies, enforcing agencies, but we don't know how many otters are getting killed because they are very small carnivores. So unless and until we detect their presence and absence in wild and what loss has been done in a given areas, we will not know the extent of the mortalities. So first thing is to assess the extent in trade. And the second thing is that they train the enforcement agencies to identify the species which are in being trade or which has been confiscated. Sometimes there is you can say identifications, like some pelt came from Himachal Pradesh to institute and we thought they are of smooth-coated otters, but when we examined them very closely, we found that they are of smooth-coated otters, they are of the Eurasian otter, not the smooth-coated otters. So what we need, the giving training to the enforcement agencies and the frontline staff about identification of otters and their basic requirements. And I am very happy to know that doctor said that he greatly benefited from the small talk. I mean, we can organize small talks or small online training program for the zoo officers. So they will know that how an otter looks like, what are the factors which is affecting, and how to captive or conserve them, particularly how do we do the conservation breeding of otters in for the purpose of, release in wild or rewilding them in wild conditions. So the situation is not that bad that we start conservation breeding, but we should have sufficient stock of otters in our zoos to educate people about the otters. Otherwise, nobody knows much about them.
Right. Okay, so those were the questions for you. We now move on to questions for the zoo. So, Dr. Rajesh, the first question for you is that otters are gregarious species. So, what special enrichment tools do you use at the zoo to ensure their all-time well-being? Because there's, like you have said, as you said, that there's conservation breeding of otters in the zoo.
Ma'am, at present we are not doing extra caring. We have initially we have tried lot, but in captivity they are not preferring what we have artificially added. So we have initially lost 2-3 puppies due to some mistake from our side. So we have just leave them, and basic requirement we are providing them, just like solid soil. They are themselves preparing burrows and breeding them, and we are not disturbing them. We are just taking care of during this pregnancy period and first 1 month of after delivery time. At that time we are mainly taking care for their fresh food and the choice of food which we have observed that they are more liking that species of fish we are offering, and we have got very good success in surviving since last 3-4 years. All the puppies we have survived.
All right, sir. So the next question for you is that you already have a butterfly garden and like a nocturnal house and bird sound display station already in place. What are your future plans for the zoo?
We are planning, ma'am, for at present we have some vacant enclosure in which initially they were constructed and not we are not getting the species. So we are first trying to get that species so more species can be displayed in zoo. In future, we are planning for captive breeding for some species which we are lacking some facility like night extra breeding and nourishing shelters. So we are trying on that also. In future, we are planning for renovate our existing nocturnal house also, and interpretation center.
All right, sir. So, the next question, like the last question for you, is that are there any special education activities or any kind of outreach programs that you do in the zoo for conservation awareness?
Yes, ma'am. Recently, we have started with our social media also for education awareness and outreach program. At present, this program also we are sharing with our local My Surat app and other social media also. Periodically, we are planning to arrange some keeper talks and other extra activities. And we are frankly want to say in otter breeding, we are lacking data deficient. We have no doubt we are successfully breeding the otter in captivity, but on that research and other we are very poor. We are also trying to focus on that issue, so it will help in future for other zoo also.
All right, sir. So those were the questions for you. And with that, we come to the conclusion of today of the 20th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk on the smooth-coated otter and the Surat Zoo. So on behalf of CZA, I would like to thank Dr. Hussain and Dr. Rajesh Patel for taking time out from their schedules and joining us for this talk. And I would also like to thank the audience for being with us throughout this session. And would also like to inform them that next week on the 29th of September, we will be having the talk on the Indian wild ass and the Sardar Patel Zoological Park, Kevadia. So do join in for that talk as well. And Surat Zoo will be continuing their outreach activities till the end of the week. So do tune into the social media pages to know more. So thank you so much once again to both of you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
So you're muted, Dr. Hussain, you're muted. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Arundhati. It was very nice. I really enjoyed this session. I
Yes,
hope
and
that my talk was, informative enough to at least initiate some research and some more conservation work. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
it
To
definitely
you
was.
and the entire CZA team. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.